Opened in only 1953, it was designed to hold 800 students. One of the things that should be looked at, if you had an actual diverse committee looking at all the needs of the community, is right there. Should we cancel that sale? Should we take that back by eminent domain? That should be explored. The only reason they ever closed Lynch in the first place, and I know school committee member at the time, Graney, fought hard to stop this, was because they said they'll never need that school as a middle school again. Let's not forget now, the school committee voted not to do middle schools. 10 years later, here we are. Absolute thing you have to have, give us 133 million of your money, we need middle schools. It's like a 180. Well, renovate Pecker Lawrence. I've heard things like, oh, we can't open the window. Okay, replace the window. You know, we can do renovation in any building. If you listen to some of the talk, it's like nothing can be renovated. If you put $20 million into Lawrence, you put $20 million into Lynch, you put $20 million into Peck, you could have very functional, fine buildings. But what they're calling renovation is, we want it to fit to a preset limit, basically deconstruct the entire building and reconstruct it from the ground up, and that's what we call renovation. And if that's not renovation, well, okay, well then that's basically building a new building. That's why they're saying renovation costs more. Let me give you a couple examples. 2 minutes, okay, thank you. Let me give you 2 examples. We renovated Holyoke High School, much bigger than any of these buildings. All new windows, changed every window in the entire building. We put central air conditioning, did a full top to bottom rehab of the building, $20 million.
New heating system.
New heating system, thank you. Holyoke Community Charter School, not talked about too much. Anybody remember the old Mammoth Mart? It was a flea market. Totally gutted the entire place, a warehouse, acquired the property and rehabbed it for $20 million. And they have 700 students, and they're in a lottery to try and get into that building, okay? It's a humble, simple building, but it's functional, and by all accounts, everybody's happy there. I mean, you don't need Taj Mahals in order to have and educate children. The difference in cost between renovation and building new is astronomical. It's almost the better part of $100 million. And you wouldn't need any override. Then we would have the money to do all the other things that we also need to do as a community. Utilize some of the space. We have so many fewer students than we had previously. This also needs to be examined. We had 7,700 kids in 1993. We only have 5,300 today. Bottom line is, we should also consider, does a middle school only need to be 7th and 8th grade? If that's the case, and only 640 students are currently in the 7th and 8th grade, that would mean 1 school, not 2 schools, 1 school. Excellent. Build 1 school. Whether it's 700 students or 1,100 students, you could have 1 school. 1 school costs $77 million, approximately. That's $70 million. That would be also a huge savings. And we have a lot of schools that also have accommodated that size. Holyoke High School was built for 2,000 students in 1964. So this notion that we would never put 1,100 students in the same building is unheard of. Other communities have done that. We have done that.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. No. I'm just going to wrap up here on this one last point on the 80%, please. The other part is, I want to just close on this one point about the 80%. We are not getting the 80% because the cost of the proposal has way exceeded what the state allows on a per square foot basis, which is $333. If we were able to control costs and go back and present an option, we would get a much better reimbursement, not 60% over what the state allows. That is costing alone $30 million to be added to the project. So I encourage everybody to go to betterforholyoke.com, get more information, listen to both sides. By all means, I'm glad you had an opportunity to hear about this side and offer you a different perspective than you might be hearing. We don't have a taxpayer-funded megaphone of the city's email and the mayor and the Dr. Reich and all of that. But I'm really thankful that we have a great panel here tonight to answer your questions, and look forward to everybody getting out to vote. If you feel that the no vote is the right vote, then I hope you will vote accordingly and come out and support it. Thank you very much.
So this evening, we're going in order of line of folks at the table who will give a brief presentation. So I already did the introductions, but before I go any further, I just want to say, keep in your minds and memories and thoughts and prayers, Bill Wargowski from the Holyoke Mall would have been here this evening, but his mother recently passed away, so he could not be here this evening. So I already introduced Press Macy's business owners, or Press Macy.
Thank you, Rich.
You can do either or.
I'll try this. I did make some notes, so I hope you don't mind. I'm not as erudite as Kevin is, but I do have some ideas here. Businesses in Holyoke get police, they get fire, they get utilities, and they get cardboard recycling, and they get tax bills. To understand a little bit about running a business, you should know that every business, big or small, operates in the context of many stakeholders. We have customers and employees. We have tax and reporting responsibilities to governments, local, state, federal. We have vendors and utilities who we buy from, and we have obligations to the business itself and to our families. If we don't balance these properly, the business suffers. Balance is critical. When one of our stakeholders changes the environment, we have to rebalance. Recently, several of these outside factors have changed. Higher wages through a new minimum wage, higher unemployment taxes, higher operating costs, and now the possibility of an 18% higher property taxes in the next 2 years. Which stakeholders need to take the hit? Can businesses rebalance? We have some of the lowest property values in the region and the lowest property value growth. Who wants a property that does not increase in value? So today, Holyoke can benefit. So today we have the second highest property tax rate in the Commonwealth, and with this design, we will have the highest rates. Holyoke can benefit from a robust community with jobs, taxes, and related economic activity. If the massive tax increase this proposal brings would add value to my property or my business, then I could perhaps get behind it. But this plan uses even the most expensive floor tiling. A local flooring specialist attended an informational meeting and learned that the project is specifying floor tiles that cost 3 times the cost of vinyl tiles used in our recent Holyoke Hospital expansion. These overpriced tiles just make the example. They do nothing to improve the education of our kids. They add crazy cost to the project and make operating a business or owning any property in Holyoke more difficult. How is that a benefit to the city? It's clear to me that needed improvements are justified. It's also clear to me that this plan is not the right one. Once the cash is spent, you'll find 30 years of difficulties. This bodes ill for me, for Holyoke, and for the kids it's intended to help. I ask you to vote no, so we can involve more people and ideas to in fact identify and solve the problem. I thank you very much for your time.
And next, Linda Bacon. But before I go any further, I just want to put a note out, housekeeping note. I want to thank you, Nave, the director here, for presenting this group and getting it ready, and Brian for the setup of the room and equipment. So shout out to them. They did a great job.
Good evening. I I will be brief because many of you hear enough from me at the city council meetings. However, I would like to make a few points. One major point is that of service. As representatives that are elected to sit on the city council, I believe our first duty is to represent you, not tell you what to think, not tell you how to vote. But in order to know how to vote and make the best decision, you have to have accurate information. So as part of being a servant to the community, one of the pillars of that is accurate information from your government and transparency of that information by your government. As long as the chart that Kevin Jordan showed on that screen that subtracts $1 million from the bond expense for this school project remains on the city website, your city government is not being honest with you. It has been officially and clearly discussed and debunked that the city school system can guarantee $1 million payment on the bond, $1 million payment back in administrative costs for 30 years. It is a good intention, and to the extent that it is written down on the website, I would say yes, they have a written agreement. However, there is no contract, there is no legally binding way to make that happen, and I think we owe it to all of you that the website should have the accurate information, and I would state to you that what you saw on the screen tonight is much more accurate than what you have read in now 3 pro-yes articles, and was sent out today from the school system, still using the $129 figure, when it has been acknowledged that it can't be binding. I acknowledge that Dr. Wright is talking with the state education folks, and I certainly think that is a good thing that he is attempting to do. And I give credit for the effort, but the reality is that there is no such agreement, and there is no such reduction. So as part of my role, I have been calling for the transparency. I am continuing to call for it. I am hoping a letter to the editor that I have prepared to send in will be published. We have been successful in getting some other information on these projects published. I've been supportive of the no group because what I've found in this unfortunate process is that we've had the yes group, and then there's been no central place to have questions asked and answered. So out of a frustration, in my perception, a no group developed. Not to be against anything for the city, but to show the other side of the story and to talk about the other possibilities. Fairly early on, after I understood more about the economics, I said, you know, it's great to have an ideal plan and an ideal goal, and we would all love to have the very best option that anyone could ever come up with. But we also have to be realistic. Look at our whole city and come up with a realistic, better plan that is affordable for everyone and also good for our kids. So I thank you for the support and the feedback that those of you, some of you in the room have given to me. Sometimes I feel a bit of a lonely voice, although I do have a couple of hearty folks on the council that speak out their mind as well. And I just hope that we're able to continue to make sure all the information is out there for everyone to make their best decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Howie Green.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you a little bit. First of all, I don't know if you read this morning's local edition, but there's a couple of quotes in here I'd like to give you coming from our city council. Regular folks, I believe that's you and me. Regular folks
don't have to do the deep dive into the data. We're making things easy to understand. If we don't vote for it, you lose $75 million. The opportunity to build these schools and an opportunity to reinvest $4.5 million back into the classrooms, students, teachers, and learners. These are quotes coming from your city council. Another quote coming from a gentleman, Mr. Moriarty. You're saving millions of dollars that go straight back into the classroom. You're saving millions of dollars that go back into the classroom. Down to pre-kindergarten. We can get kids on the right footing early on in buildings where we can focus specifically on their age-appropriate education. My question to that is, why aren't we doing that now? Because we have done it for many, many years in the Holyoke Public Schools, because I spent 35 years there working with some of you and some of your children, and I know the quality of education that they received in the schools, and it was excellent. Lynch School. I have a series of clips from the time I was on the school committee where I said, we're going to need Lynch School to house our children. It was built in 1953. The building is solid. I jumped through hoops for 6 years trying to preserve that building. It has everything available to the young people in Holyoke, including a print shop, a woodworking shop, a music auditorium, gymnasium, cafeteria, library, etc., classrooms. I said, not only would that be a good institution for our children if it was rehab, it could also house the school department offices that we were spending $250,000 a year on Suffolk Street in rent and getting nothing in return. And it could also house the warehouse, a separate building on Main Street that taxpayers are paying for, once again, to move that to the Lynch School with an inner courtyard, with a loading dock, and all the facilities that you needed for a school. Building rehab, all you have to do is take a look at William Whiting School and Holyoke Catholic High School. Those buildings have been rehabilitated into beautiful apartments in downtown Holyoke. They said that they were condemned, these buildings couldn't be rehabbed. Well, obviously there's many people living there now. So building rehabilitation is certainly something that can be done in the city and could be done very effectively, probably at a much cheaper cost than building 2 new schools. And finally, they had a school, a portable school on the Amazon property now that was there for 4 years housing high school students. There was no hue and cry about conditions there. They disassembled that school, that high school, in approximately 4 days because I witnessed them do it. So there are other options that we have rather than putting a burden on the taxpayers that is going to hurt, especially the seniors and many of the people who are low-income earners in the city. Nobody in city government is more pro-education than I am, or more pro-school. But I feel that this is not a good idea. It's not a good idea for the entire community, and we have to look outside the box at the entire community and make sure that everybody is taken care of, our young people, our middle-income people, and our older people as well. Thank you very much for attending tonight.
Next, we'll hear from City Councilor at Large Dan Bresnahan.
Thank you for being here, everybody, and I just want everybody to know, like, this is not really about, you know, the kids. People that may say we're against this decision, oh, you're anti-education, you're anti-kids. It's not the truth. I mean, I have children, you know, I have 4 older brothers. We all went to Holyoke Public Schools. You know, I mean, I went to Highland, Kelly, Lynch. Most of these schools that I went to either closed down or torn down. And the big difference for me was that when I went home, my parents ensured that I did my homework, and they ensured that I went to college, and they instilled in me the dedication of how important an education was. We could build Harvard, right next door to us. And you know what? Unfortunately and sadly, it's not going to really change the dynamics of the school systems. And that's the truth. We need to change the culture. Bricks and mortars don't make a community. It's a culture and the people in that. We have children that instead of going to where you might be coming from, go down this way and you see how many kids are hanging out in that Chestnut Park. You know what? And they're not saying the rosary and they're not reading their books. That's the problem that the city of Holyoke has faced, is that the poverty in this community, because the state of Massachusetts has allowed this to happen, we have become the dumping ground of poverty. And we cannot build. And as much as I'd like to see new schools, I would go for one. I wouldn't have a problem. I'd advocate for it. Let's try it. When Kelly's school was built, I was one of the first kids going to that school in the 70s, in 3rd and 4th grade. And you know what? It was God forgive me, it was a nut house. It was crazy down there. I was seeing things that 3rd and 4th grades that 3rd and 4th graders shouldn't see. And you know what? The school system, as much as people might want to paint the picture, and I don't want to be negative Nelly here, it really hasn't changed. The violence has increased. The truancy rate has increased. The teenage pregnancy rate has increased. These are all factors that we're facing. I know people that as much as they want to participate in the public school system, they want their children safe. And they want their children to go to school where they're going to get a good education. But most importantly, they need to go home where they're getting that education reinforced. If they're not getting the qualities of education that our teachers are giving them in the schools, and they're not getting them at home, that's problem number one. And you know what? Building any school will not change that. There's no school that's going to change where these kids are going home to. Our option would be to tear down all the buildings down in all the blocks and apartments and build brand new buildings. And maybe that might change the dynamics of the city of Holyoke. But I'll finish up with a couple of things. It's funny how people read articles and everybody takes something different out of it. A quote here from Councilor Lisi: the state reimburses schools up to 80% of eligible construction costs. Holyoke's reimbursement rate is close to 60. So instead of the Yes to Invest group saying, let's vote for a tax increase, let's get some of our representatives down in Boston, get us the 80% that this city of Holyoke deserves. We've done enough for the state of Massachusetts, harboring the poor, harboring the sick, having every single social justice program you have in the city, and we welcome them with open arms. And you're going to chip us and give us 60%? Stick it in your hat, as far as I'm concerned. Another quote: based on the average home valuation of $190,000, taxpayers would see an increase of $130, whatever it could be. Don't mug me. They said the same thing about the CPA. It's only going to be $130. It's only going to be $24. You don't know what my checkbook looks like. You don't know the bills I have. You don't know what I'm making as a person and trying to make a living. How dare you assume that you can come to my wallet and take the money that I'm busting my backside to bring home and support my family? It's not right. It's absolutely not right. You can't just assume. There's no guarantees. You can't just say it's only going to be this, it's only going to be that. Because you know what? If my mother's house wasn't paid for, we'd have to sell it so she'd have to go somewhere because she can't afford it. She's living on Social Security. She doesn't have a pension. My father's she's living off my father's Social Security. End of story. 88 years old, living in a house, getting by, paying over $4,000 a year in taxes, and she's living off Social Security. How do you think she feels about it? And she has no children in the public school system. She put 5 of them through there and made sure 3 of us got through college. The other 2 are goofballs, but that's another story. and finally, and the last couple things I want to say is that, Michael, you're already a great guy. I worked with him, really super guy. I actually had him as a Latin teacher at Lynch. He's a great guy, like him personally. His comment is that the argument is that the debt exclusion won't affect the poor. That's not true. Because I work in low-income housing. And HUD and DHCD put an amount value on 1 single bedroom, a 2 single bedroom, and 3 single bedroom. So if I, as a landlord, am getting $900 a month to subsidize a unit from HUD, Uncle Sam, I can't go back to him and say, well, you know what, my taxes right now, can you make it $925? It's called fair market value, and it is set the year before that you can send rental costs out. So that rent increase is going to go on to the renters. So when someone says something to the effect of like, if the rent increase isn't going to, taxes increase aren't going to affect the poor because they can't afford it. It's not true. The government only gives you so much per bedroom in every unit that you have. So if Joe Blow, who owns a 15-unit apartment block, his taxes go up $2,500 a year. He can't go back to Uncle Sam and ask them to increase the rate that they're giving him. He has to go to the tenants who can't afford it. So, I mean, that's another problem. And finally, you know, I get a kid, I get it, the last comment is like, we're putting kids in buildings that aren't safe. I mean, I should be a millionaire. I should have sued the school department years ago. They were ripping out asbestos out of the building. We had Lynch when I was there. We had a woodworking shop, a printing shop, Jimmy Baird, Wally, great people. And the bottom line is that if I don't get that love and reinforcement of education at home, after 8 hours of getting that at school, it's lost. And again, they could put any A1, Division I, Ivy League college anywhere, and if the children in Holyoke are not getting books read to them before they go to bed at nighttime, they're not getting tucked in, they're not getting loved, they're not getting exposed to how important it is to be successful in life and be a taxpayer and get a job and go to college. This is going to cost us money that we just aren't going to have. And unfortunately, because the state's already got a grab onto us, you know what's going to be next for us? A financial receivership. Thank you very much for coming. Support everybody. And a side note, it's been an honor. I was a city councilor for 8 years for City Holyoke and health director for 10. It's been an honor, you know, working for the city. It's been an honor serving the city, and I love the city, and I'm just happy to be here. And let's just do the right thing, folks. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Will Pueblo.
Hey everybody, I'm Will Pueblo. I'm the new guy here, and that's right, I'm there's some big shoes to fill with Dan on the council, right? Like I said, I'm the new guy, I'm Will Pueblo. I'm running at large, Air Force vet, 7 years active duty, Station Farm. Yeah,
Thank you for your service.
but no, I mean, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Kevin, for the leadership role you've taken as far as this whole thing goes. I mean, we really got to sound the alarm on this, guys. This is just such an irresponsible proposal. We got to say it like it is, right? You know, we can't be beating around the bush out here. We gotta call it. We gotta say it. And it's funny because I'm out there campaigning every day. And the reality is that a lot of people don't know that there's a 30-year. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, how's that? Test 1, 2, 3. All right. Can I get it? All right. All right. Yeah, and the sad thing is that a lot of people don't know that there's a 30-year debt attached to this thing. You know, I'll go out there and I'll campaign and I'll say, hey, have you heard about the proposal to raise your taxes? They say, no, what are you talking about? You know, have you heard about the proposal to build the 2 schools? Yeah, I've heard about that. It's the same thing, you know? So we got to work to really tell people what's really going on here, because the other side's really not doing a good job of communicating the entire thing as a whole, even though they've had, you know, however many conferences they've had about it. But, you know, and Dan, I mean, credit to this guy, you know, I've done it. I grew up here in the city of Holyoke. I'm 23. My mother raised me on her own. And, you know, wow, what a strong woman, you know. I graduated at 17, I went to Lynch, went to Holyoke High, and, you know, I joined the Air Force. I think I found the right path, and that path is there. It's there for our children. It's there for everybody to go out and take. We just have to push them in the right direction. And 2 buildings are not going to do that. It's the shell, you know, just, he hit the nail on the head, you know, what's going on at home. What's going on in the environment, you know, the shootings we just had out here. I mean, what's going on in Holyoke, right? What's going on in Holyoke? We're all saying it at home. It's about time we start saying it in community forums. You know, what is going on in our city? So we got to take it back. We got to step up. We got to start doing something, get involved. You know, it's sad, like I said, how many people aren't involved and don't know what's really going on here. And, you know, that's exactly what I want to advocate for. So I'm not going to take too much time. You know, I'm surrounded by very knowledgeable people, a lot of experience up here, and, you know, I look forward to talking to everybody. Thank you.
Next is David Bartley.
Good evening. Thank you everybody for coming. I am not the new guy. I just want to I'll give very brief remarks. I was explaining this last week. Will, thank you. Danny, thank you for your service. It's been a joy sitting across from you the last 8 years. We've had so many laughs, a couple arguments, but mainly a lot of laughs. Howie, I'm so thankful you're running again, and I hope we can get behind Howie and Will to bring some new energy to the city council. Linda, my friend who sits next to me to my left, it's just been a joy to get to know her and her husband over these last 8 years. Mr. Macy, thank you for being here. Just a wonderful gentleman. I'm going to say a bit about Mr. Macy in a minute. Mr. Brenna, thank you for all you're doing for Holyoke, and especially to my friend, Kevin Jourdain. What he's brought to to me, personally, just sitting beneath him for my first 6 years on the board, just his sense of humor. I mean, I get his jokes. I mean, I think Kevin is hysterical, but the amount of energy he brings every night to this effort, to city government, and of course, thanks to his wife, and thanks to all of you. I'm going to touch on some small points. I am a very proud 1983 graduate of Holyoke High School. Why did I go to Holyoke High School? Well, I was 13 years old at Blessed Sacrament. Mom and Dad both came out of parochial school. My brother and sister ultimately went to parochial school. One person approached me. Her name is Ethel Wilson, God rest her soul, and she convinced me to go to Holyoke High School. I was 13, I was still the same height, and I was about 60 pounds lighter than I am now, so if you can imagine that. And I made it, and I survived. Now, why did I make it there? I made it because of Mr. Shevlin, Mr. Sears, Miss Bach, Miss Johnson, Miss McKenna, Miss Moriarty. I could go on Mr. Lockery. And I want to say Miss Bach twice because that's how much she meant to me. And that's why I made it through Holyoke High, and then I went on to other things. I'm going to touch on a couple things. Just follow up on what Kevin said. How did we get here? There's a 24-person building committee. Did you know this? Did any of you know this committee existed? Well, it did exist. It did exist. A 24-person committee of Holyoke and Holyoke affiliated people. Do you want to know how many people on that committee were from the private sector? One. Do you want to know how many were at City Hall insiders? So in other words, they had they worked for city government, or they worked for the building, the school committee. 21. Sorry, 15. And the remainder of the 24, this is my favorite part. And they're voting on this. They're voting in 2 schools. 3 were architects, 1 was a consultant, and 2 of the 24 members were from the construction company, Fontaine Brothers. Let me ask you, if you were working for Fontaine Brothers and you had a chance to make $500 a square foot, where do you think you were going to vote on this? But you probably didn't know that. You know who else didn't know this? The mayor of the city of Holyoke. Because you know how many meetings he went to for that building committee? There were 21 meetings. This is all public record. Do you want to guess how many meetings he went to? That's a documented. It's a documented agenda. He went to 0. He did not attend 1 meeting. But I'm the mean city councilor. But that's all right. Lynch School. I just want to touch on Lynch School for a minute. We had the opportunity as city officials, and Rich, if I have to pipe down, just tell me. We had the opportunity to. Because your question is, why not Lynch School? I indicated I was a graduate of Blessed Sacrament. I didn't go to public school till 9th grade in 1979.